Have you ever thought about how unfair the world of Harry Potter truly is? What if one of the most tragic stories in the series was hidden in plain sight, disguised as a charming subplot? In today's video, you will find out why the history of house elves is the most brutal and unjust tale in the entire magical universe. The Harry Potter books and movies are often seen as a light-hearted fantasy for children, and at first glance that makes sense. The early stories of the young wizard are filled with wonder, humor, and adventure. But beneath the spells and Quidditch matches, there's a darker reality, one filled with cruelty, oppression, and entire races doomed to suffering. One of the greatest injustices in the wizarding world is the fate of house elves. These small, peculiar creatures draped in little more than rags exist only to serve. Their magic is strong, yet they are forbidden from wielding wands. They live to obey, their lives dedicated to wizards who rarely show them kindness. Most fans remember Dobby, the brave and loyal elf who sacrificed himself to save Harry Potter. But his story is an exception. Most house elves live in silent servitude, bound by ancient magical contracts, never daring to dream of freedom. Where did they come from? Why are they trapped in this miserable existence? Clues scattered throughout the book suggest a tragic past. Centuries ago, something catastrophic happened to their people, something that left them desperate and vulnerable. In their time of need, wizards offered them refuge, but that kindness came with a cost. The elves, in gratitude, swore eternal servitude. What began as an act of loyalty turned into generations of enslavement. Over time, wizards grew comfortable with this power. They took the elves' magic for granted, stripping them of their rights and independence. Even worse, the elves themselves came to accept their fate. They saw freedom not as a gift but as a punishment. A disgraced elf, one cast out by their master, felt only shame. That's the most horrifying part of their story. What could be worse than a race so deeply brainwashed that they love their own chains? Even Hogwarts, supposedly a beacon of justice, played a role in this oppression. The house elves who worked there were granted more freedom than their counterparts in noble wizarding families, but they were still forced to labor endlessly, hidden in the shadows of the castle. Yet no one seemed to care. Even kind-hearted wizards like Hagrid never questioned it. Only one person did, Hermione Granger. She was outraged when she saw a house elf, Winky, publicly humiliated by her master, Barty Crouch Sr. That moment changed everything for Hermione. She founded SPEW, an organization to fight for elf rights, and even convinced Harry and Ron to join. But no one took her seriously. Not even the elves themselves wanted to be freed. Some, however, played significant roles in the story, though they are often overlooked. Kreacher, the bitter and broken servant of the Black family, was used by Voldemort in one of his most sinister schemes. Remember the cursed locket hidden in the cave? Voldemort forced Kreacher to drink the poison guarding it. Later, the elf returned with his master, Regulus Black, who stole the locket and replaced it with a fake. That one act of defiance cost Regulus his life, but Kreacher never forgot. Then there's Winky, an elf who never made it into the films but played a heartbreaking role in the books. She was fiercely loyal to the Crouch family, tasked with guarding Barty Crouch Jr., a convicted Death Eater. When he escaped, Winky was cast out in disgrace. She was devastated. To her, freedom was the worst punishment imaginable. She fell into despair, drowning her sorrows in butterbeer, unable to find purpose without a master to serve. House elves were kind, hard-working, and incredibly powerful. Yet their destiny was shaped by wizards who saw them as nothing more than tools. Even in a world where magic could make anything possible, no one ever truly fought for their freedom. And that is what makes their story the most tragic injustice in the Harry Potter universe. Their fate was sealed by centuries of tradition, a cycle so deeply ingrained that even the most compassionate wizards failed to recognize it as cruelty. House elves were not born into servitude by nature. They were forced into it by history, by powerful families who twisted their loyalty into chains. The saddest part is that no one even questioned it. Wizards, even the kindest ones, accepted their presence the way one might accept the furniture in their home. Silent, useful, always there. Hermione's rebellion, though noble, was a whisper in a storm. She tried to educate people, to make them see what she saw. But how do you fight against something so old, so normalized, that even the victims refuse to break free? When she spoke to the elves in Hogwarts's kitchens, they were horrified at the mere suggestion of being freed. They loved their work. They were proud to serve. The idea of leaving, of stepping into the world without a master, filled them with dread. This wasn't simple oppression. This was something worse, indoctrination so complete that it erased even the desire for freedom. They had been raised to believe their suffering was an honor, that obedience was their purpose, that their magic, strong and ancient, existed only to serve wizards. It wasn't just their physical labor that was stolen from them. Their minds, their spirits, their very identity had been shaped by those who controlled them. Dobby was different. Dobby was the exception. His freedom didn't come from within. It was forced upon him when Lucius Malfoy, in a fit of rage, accidentally handed him clothing. And yet, instead of despairing like Winky, instead of clinging to the comfort of servitude, Dobby embraced it. He saw what no other house elf could. He saw that life could be different. He wanted more. He fought for it. But what did that fight cost him? Freedom in the wizarding world was a curse for a house elf. Dobby was ridiculed. Even other elves shunned him. Wizards, even those who supported his freedom, treated him like an oddity. He struggled to find work, barely survived on the wages he was too humble to demand. He was free, but he was alone. Perhaps that was why house elves refused to rebel. What was the point? If freedom only led to loneliness, to hardship, to the scorn of both wizards and their own kind, then was it really freedom at all? That's what makes their story so cruel. It isn't just the wizards who enslaved them, it's the system itself, a structure so perfectly built that no one, neither the oppressors nor the oppressed, could see beyond it. Even Dobby, with all his courage, with all his defiance, still carried the scars of his past. He still referred to himself in the third person, still punished himself when he felt he had done wrong. The chains were invisible, but they were still there. Hogwarts was filled with students from every background, muggle-borns, half-bloods, purebloods, children raised in different homes with different beliefs, and yet none of them ever stopped to question why the meals appeared on their tables, why the dormitories were always clean, why the castle seemed to run itself without a single human hand lifting a finger. The elves of Hogwarts weren't seen, they weren't acknowledged. Even those who spoke of justice and equality turned a blind eye to the creatures scrubbing floors beneath their feet. And what of the professors, the wise, knowledgeable witches and wizards who shaped young minds? They, too, ignored it. Dumbledore, the great defender of Muggle rights, the one who fought against blood purity, never freed the elves in his own school. Even he accepted it as normal. Perhaps the most tragic part of all this is the realization that house elves might have once been equals. Before their fall, before their servitude, they had a culture, a home, a history. But where is that history now? Erased, forgotten, reduced to whispers in the dark. The books of the wizarding world hold no records of their past. Their own voices have been lost. And the ones who could have told their story? They had been conditioned to believe it wasn't worth telling. Imagine the magic they could have wielded if they were allowed to grow beyond their chains. Imagine the world they could have built if they had been given the chance. But they weren't. And they never would be. Because even in a world where wizards could rewrite the laws of nature, change time, cheat death, they couldn't be bothered to change this. The tragedy of the house elves isn't just that they were enslaved, it's that they accepted it. That even in a world filled with wonder and possibility, their fate was sealed before they were ever born. Their story was never meant to be one of rebellion. It was never meant to have a happy ending.